So the start of the race then, and an opportunity for Oscar Piastri to take the lead. It's a long run down to the first corner. He's on the clean side of the grid, and as the lights go out, you can see the difference here as Leclerc struggles to get away. Russell's had an anti-stall, and look at the dust haze that is on the inside there. Norris covers off the inside and then the middle of the road. Piastri is on the charge, but Lando at this point has done everything right as they go 3 wide behind, and Verstappen takes an important position from the Ferraris. But up to turn 2, and this is where Oscar really makes the difference. He gets a little bit alongside Lando, and at this point, it's really tricky for Norris to know, do I defend the inside, or could he sweep all the way around the outside on a circuit where it's very possible to do that, because then you get the inside line for turn 3. It's not possible to do that on this day, because it's so dusty out wide, and that's what Norris is about to find out. He doesn't slow the car down as much as he needs to in this phase. Piastri's on the grippy part on the racing line, manages to rotate the car, better peak of brake, and now Lando's out wide and he's in all sorts of trouble out on the dusty surface. So Oscar finds the grip and manages to nab the position, and it could have been a really, really crucial one as the race wore on. Here we go on board with Piastri, and we see a great launch from 3rd position. Now he's tucked into the slipstream behind Norris. He's going to force his teammate onto the mucky stuff to defend. So we're on the racing line. We have a little bit more grip. We can attack with more vigour on the brakes, because you know that you've got a little bit more grip with the contact with the surface. We're going to have the same thing up towards turn 2. But actually, if I rewind it, you can see Oscar here with his thumb on the boost button means that he's going to deplete everything from his battery to try and get this lead from Lando. And as we play this through slowly, you can see Norris there with the light blinking at the back starts just harvesting energy in towards turn 2. He's derating slightly, which just puts Oscar in this position where he's now got a bit of an overlap. So the next thing to do is brake aggressively, because if you brake too soft, too early, you know you're not going to go around the outside if you're Lando, so you know you don't need to go in too hard. But because Oscar's gone in quite deep here and aggressively, Norris doesn't know if he's going to try and sweep around the outside or if he's going for the cutback. So it's really well set up here from Piastri. As it is, he goes for the cutback, sends Norris out wide onto the dirt, and he's on the limit of grip. But through he goes into the race lead. Wasn't that happy with his pace through the weekend, but somehow, end of lap 1 of the Hungaroring, a tricky circuit to overtake, and Oscar has the lead of the race. And it was so dusty offline the entire way through. Norris found it out right at the start, but that same line was still really dusty late on for Lewis Hamilton fighting with Kimi Antonelli. There we go, out onto the dirt. The same slide, a big oversteer. It was rubbering in a little bit throughout the race, but you can see here, Hamilton just out wide and then finds the same part of the road that Norris found, and that's his charge off for Antonelli later on as well. So perfectly executed the race start for Piastri, and he's into the race lead.
It's Lando Norris who has the lead. Piastri climbs up to 2nd, and they go side by side. They're racing each other once again. Lando Norris is wide. Oscar Piastri is going through to take the lead.
But Piastri's pace in the race wasn't what he'd hoped for, and he's under a bit of pressure. McLaren pit him early, and now he's got to come through some traffic. That gives Norris clear air out front to prove that he's a lot quicker. And Piastri, to keep the lead, will have to pump in good times on fresh tyres. You should be able to do that. He's effectively sort of defending the undercut here. It's typically would be pretty difficult for Norris to go longer on old tyres, especially on a circuit like Budapest. But Piastri comes up to the back markers, and this is what changes the race for him. We've got Carlos Sainz fighting here with Fernando Alonso, and Sainz doesn't know that Piastri is here, trying to put a move, the net race leader still at this moment, on the battling Spaniards, and Sainz is going to come across into the path there of Oscar, and you never like to see the race leaders being impeded or even being barged off the road by back markers. It's not what we want to see, and it costs Piastri. It cost him 4 seconds over this lap and the previous lap. But I would say there are some mitigations in place for why you've seen this from Sainz. And let's start with the fact that the blue flag system was malfunctioning in Budapest. So normally drivers would get a warning from their race engineer when there's an approaching car within 3 seconds. They then have to get out of the way when that car is within 1.2 seconds at the nearest available opportunity. If they don't do that, they're going to be getting a penalty. But that system wasn't in place. So the race engineers had to work even harder to establish when faster cars were coming because they weren't getting notified automatically from that blue flag system. And at this stage in the race, Williams are not on that with Sainz. But you can see they're not the only ones here. So we've got a blue flag in place as we see Sainz here of the previous lap coming out of turn 11. A blue light, which is the same as a blue flag. But here, it's not actually for Sainz. And this is what gets a little bit confusing for the race, because you can see on board with Piastri, Sainz is that car there. Behind him is Alonso. Behind him is Ollie Behrman. And this blue flag, if Sainz slows down at this point for the blue flag and respects it, he's going to lose probably 2 positions and an absolute ton of lap time. So that's why the drivers couldn't just blindly follow the blue flags at this stage. They have to also be checking their mirrors and they have to be in communication with their race engineer. So as we play this through now, Behrman does get out of the way up towards turn 12. He does what he needs to do according to the rules, and Piastri goes through. But it still cost Oscar quite a lot of lap time here on this lap. We've now got Alonso fighting with Sainz, but it's now Alonso's duty to get out of the way with those flashing blue flags. But to be honest, Piastri's probably a little bit too far back at this stage. So Fernando could argue he's not close enough. I'm going to lose too much time in backing off. The back markers have to, but only when Piastri gets to 1.2 seconds away. And I think at this stage, Oscar is too far back. So Fernando's all eyes forward, trying to pass Carlos Sainz here. And he makes the move up the inside of turn 1. So Sainz now is the car that Piastri can see pretty well in his sights as we pause it here. And he's just been told here, Carlos, that Fernando was getting blue flags for Oscar Piastri coming through. The confusing factor, Fernando has just overtaken you. So that means you now should be getting blue flags for Oscar. But it's not the clearest of messages from his race engineer. Right here, Oscar looks like he's very close to the back of Carlos. But as they get on the gas, you can see Sainz has straight line the exit, and he's able to just extend up towards turn 2. And he's still fighting really hard with Fernando. Now, at this point, they could both get out of the way for Piastri. But again, I still think they're far enough ahead that you could argue Piastri should be a little bit closer to force the back markers to get out of the way. That 1.2 second gap, it probably could still be a little bit more than that. So the best case here is that Oscar's going to pass between turns 3 and turns 4, which is what's coming up. And that's what he would be expecting as well at this stage. The confusing factor is Sainz is still side by side with Alonso, and they're going to lose so much time coming through this turn 2 corner. So Alonso finally makes the move. Sainz now is out wide. He's on the dusty stuff, and the angle of the two cars does make this one pretty much impossible for Sainz to see in his mirrors at this stage that Oscar is there. Because of the angle of the Williams and the angle of the McLaren, the position of the McLaren, Sainz in his mirrors would be looking that way rather than out that way. You'd need a periscope to see where the McLaren was at this stage. So he just doesn't know he's there. He's not been told on the radio by his engineer at this stage that Piastri is on him either. There was the coded message before that Piastri was in Alonso's range. So yes, he could have had that, but he's not been crystal clear, the race engineer. So as Sainz is still looking at Alonso, he won't know that Piastri's there in this moment, and he keeps coming across. There's your contact. Race leader, the net race leader, with a back marker, you never like to see it, but you can see some mitigations here for Sainz. It wasn't as straightforward as one guy just driving around, ignoring blue flags, not checking the mirrors. The fact that he had two cars initially and then one car actually blocking him from having a view of Piastri until he had one chance into turn 2 to do that, when Piastri was probably still a little bit too far back. There is a little bit of mitigation. I can see why Sainz was not fully just holding his hands up and taking the blame here. But I can also see Piastri's frustration, because you're never expecting, as a race leader, for a back marker to just drive into you. So really frustrating here. And Sainz does get a penalty for it. The bit that frustrated me watching this in the commentary box was the next thing that happened. So Sainz forces Piastri off the road. But rather than now jumping out of the way up to turn 4, you could argue right now, as Sainz is doing actually on the radio, how could I have known Oscar's there? You didn't warn me. Well, you definitely know he's there now, because you've just seen him and you've just mentioned that you didn't see him before. So now Sainz should definitely be getting out of the way up towards turn 4, but he still checks his mirrors, thinks that Piastri's too far back, and keeps his foot in up towards turn 4. So having just forced the net race leader off the road, we're now impeding him through 2 more turns before eventually up at turn 6, we jump out of the way. So it just adds insult to injury here for a man that's already caused contact to keep impeding Oscar Piastri, the net race leader, all the way through. towards turn 6. So really frustrating. Sainz got a 5-second penalty for causing a collision. I can see some mitigation for that because of the technicalities, the malfunction in play, and the number of cars in between, the blue flags flashing kind of relentlessly. But after that, he really should have got out of the way. And I think probably overall, 5 seconds is probably a little bit soft. But because of the malfunction, Sainz wasn't the only driver as well to get into trouble. Ollie Bearman picked up a penalty for impeding Isaac Hadjar when he didn't get out of the way towards turn 12, as well as he did for Oscar Piastri before. This is Lando Norris coming up to Gabriel Bortoleto. Now, I can't understand here why Bortoleto isn't checking the mirrors, because Norris is quite clearly within range. He's almost within range to lunge the Audi driver into the first turn, but he stays ahead for another corner and then makes way out of this one. This is Lando now en route to the race, and he gives him a wave as he comes through. But I did think Bortoleto generally was a driver that wasn't aware what was going on behind him, trying to get back to a point. This was later on with Antonelli and Hamilton. You got Antonelli on fresh tyres, literally looking to overtake the Audi rather than the Audi jump out of the way. It gives Hamilton a brief, fleeting chance to try and come through as well. And because Bortoleto here is sitting in the way for far too long, you've almost got a change of the result of the podium. So it wasn't just Sainz, there was Bearman, and I think Bortoleto here is lucky to get away with it as he eventually does cede position up towards turn 12. So a really difficult day for drivers, for race engineers, and we won't see too many of these, I think.
The lap traffic is struggling to get out of the way, and it brings Hamilton and Antonelli together. And for those who say get rid of the blue flags, welcome to what it would look like.
But I don't think the blue flag story for Piastri was the absolute game changer for him, because I think overall there was just a lack of pace fundamentally for Oscar on the hard tyre. Here's your race plot, and you can see this part here where Oscar's papaya drops down, and that is going to be your crucial couple of laps where he's stuck behind Bearman, Sainz, and then Alonso, where he loses 4 seconds to Norris. As soon as that happens, Norris pits, and he comes out ahead of Piastri. So what would have happened if Piastri wasn't held up by the back markers at this point, with McLaren's strategy playing out as it was? Well, you'd have had a great battle to watch later on in the race. Norris would have come out once again behind Piastri, but with a big tyre offset. That is what we're looking at here, with the dashed line being Norris and the solid yellow line being what would have happened for Piastri. The solid papaya is what did happen, of course, for Oscar. So Lando would have emerged behind, but with the pace advantage that he showed already in the previous stint, with even fresher tyres, it seems highly likely that Norris would have passed Piastri on the track, but we would have loved to see it. So it was a little bit of a shame that we didn't get the chance to see the McLarens fight it out, and that Oscar didn't get the chance to defend, to hang on to it. So that was the bit of bad luck for Piastri, but he was also just a little bit too slow in the race. If we head back towards the race plot here, you can see the way that Norris was stalking Piastri in this phase of the race. That's the dashed line being held up behind the solid line. And as soon as Piastri pits, Norris is able to go significantly faster and bring that speed back. More than a second a lap that he found as soon as Piastri pitted. So we heard Lando on the radio saying, I can be way quicker, I can drop him in 10 laps, all the rest of it. He did back that up when Piastri pitted. And those laps showed, I think, Norris's pace advantage and why he would have been too strong throughout the remainder of the race for Piastri. So I think McLaren were right to give the drivers different strategies at that point, just so they could let Norris use his pace and not keep him bottled in behind Piastri. It gave them a double shot of winning the race. And a look at the data shows big speed differences between Norris and Piastri. This is Piastri on lap 32 in the red, just before he pitted. Norris a couple of laps after he pitted. So a couple of laps of fuel, but no major difference here. Similar tyres. And Norris is so much quicker than Piastri and what he was able to do when he was stuck in behind Piastri. The gap overall here is nearly 1.3 seconds, the difference. And it looks like Lando is driving with much more of a V shape to me. So a lot of these corners, he's slowing down earlier to the apex in the blue, getting the car stopped, holding the brakes in a straight line. And it's pretty much the same story in every single one of these corners, where the blue slows up earlier, straight lines the exit, and then jumps on the gas. Looking at the steering, it actually looks like Lando's sliding the car around a little bit more than Oscar, but that driving style on the hard tyre was clearly working for him, being aggressive on the entry, slowing the car down, rotating it, and then getting it out. So he's keeping great pace. He's also keeping those tyres alive, and that was the magic for Lando Norris's win.
As soon as I had some clean air, as soon as I had an opportunity to show what the car can do, we were fastest by a mile. So very happy, of course, to get the win. I know I was a little bit lucky with some things today, but I was convinced I could still win, and very happy that we did.